Hello, Miss Gita and friends. Today, our group is going to be presenting about the personal response approach. Our group members are Lu Xinyan, Jensen Ha, Ng Ming Hui, Tae Wen Ching, and Siwik Leong.
Now I will explain the personal response approach. The personal response approach is a student-centered approach to teach literature. It encourages students to express their own thoughts, feelings, opinions, and experiences after reading a literary text. Instead of looking for only one correct interpretation, this approach values different perspectives because each reader may understand the text differently. Students are encouraged to connect the text with their own lives, beliefs, and experiences, making reading more meaningful and engaging. In this approach, the teacher acts as a facilitator by guiding students to explain and support their ideas with evidence from the text. Overall, this approach helps develop critical thinking, creativity, empathy, and a deeper appreciation of literature.
Alright, here are the strengths. First, we have deeper comprehension and meaning. It means students link themes to real life situations, to group complex narratives, faster and shifting reading from a passive chore to an active one, and also personalized process. For example, a teacher asks, how have your parents ever forbidden you from hanging out with someone? Student will instantly connect the personal experiences of rebellion to the character's motivations. And the next one will be increase student engagement. It means students become highly motivated to participate when lessons validate their individual backgrounds, emotions, and personal life perspectives. For example, before reading a poem about tough choices, students write down a difficult decision they made this year. Disengaged students will eagerly read to see how the narrator handles a similar fork in life. Last of the strengths is the improved language competence. It means students who originally develop expressive and communicative skills because they are driven by a genuine desire to articulate their own thoughts and feelings. For example, after discussing a time but they misjudged someone, students write a creative diary entry from the perspective of a misunderstood community member. Practicing vocabulary is meaningful in a meaningful context.
Now, I would like to explain the three main weaknesses of the personal response approach. The first weakness is that the personal response approach can lead to overly subjective interpretations. This approach encourages students to express their own feelings, opinions, and experiences when reading a literary text. While this increases engagement, students may rely too much on their personal view instead of supporting their ideas with evidence from the text. In literature, interpretation should be based on both personal responses and textual evidence. If students focus only on their own experiences, they may misunderstand the author's intended message or overlook important details. For example, a student might say that they dislike the main character because the character reminds them of someone they dislike in real life. This response is based on personal feelings rather than the character's actions, development, or role in the story. Therefore, the interpretation becomes subjective instead of analytical. The second weakness is that students may neglect literary analysis. Since the personal response approach emphasizes emotional and personal connections, students sometimes pay less attention to important literary elements such as symbolism, imagery, characterization, setting, theme, and the author's writing style. However, these literary elements are essential because they help readers understand the deeper meaning of a text and appreciate the author's techniques. If students only discuss how the text make them feel, they may miss the hidden message or important literary devices used by the author. For example, after reading a poem, a student might simply say that they enjoyed the poem because it reminds them of their childhood. Although this is a valid personal response, the student fails to explain how the poet uses imagery, symbolism, or figurative language to create meaning. As a result, the analysis remains superficial and does not demonstrate a deeper understanding of the text. The third weakness is that it is difficult for teachers to assess students' work objectively. Since every student has different life experience, belief, and emotions, their responses to the same literary text can be very different. In the personal response approach, there is often no single correct answer as long as students can explain their opinions. However, this creates a challenge for teachers because it can be difficult to decide which response deserves a higher score. Teachers need to evaluate not only the students' personal opinions but also whether those opinions are supported by evidence from the text. For example, two students may interpret the ending of a story differently. One student may believe the ending is hopeful, while another thinks it is tragic. Both interpretations may be acceptable if they are supported by the textual evidence. This makes assessment more complex and sometimes less consistent than approaches with fixed answer.
So here is an idea on how to apply the personal response approach in teaching literature. My idea is to teach students short stories. According to this approach, it is very reader-centered and there is no correct answer. So students' opinions and experiences are very important. It is as important as the author's intended meaning when they wrote the story. So for the activity, for the pre-lesson, I will ask the students about the title of the story. How does the title make them think of? Or what does title make them think of in their own life? This will form personal connection with the students. They will be able to think about what the title remind them of and sort of relate it to their own experiences in their own past because everybody has different backgrounds. And in the lesson development, after they have thought about the title what the title speaks to them about, they will read the story with the help of the teacher. And then after they finish reading, they can write freely about what resonated with them, which part of the story or what emotions reminded them about their personal experiences. This will help them form a personal connection with the story. And they will connect because everybody has different backgrounds, so each of them may connect with a different part of the story, some plot or some characters, and then they can write about what relates to them the most. And they can talk about what they would do if they are the characters or if they are in the story. So for the post lesson, the students will be encouraged to share their personal reactions rather than the summaries of the story to the whole class. Because everybody has different past experiences, each of their takeaways or their interpretations will be different, and there is no correct answer. So the students will feel freer to express themselves. This will reduce their anxiety and also encourage their participation in the classroom. And they can share with the classroom about what they've learned or what relates to them the most and what is their takeaway or the moral values of the story. And this is a very good way for them to learn the short story because other than learning the story, it also deepens their empathy and the relevance of literature. It also teaches them about different perspectives because everybody's struggles and everybody's lives and their backgrounds are different. So it will develop their empathy and broaden their worldview. This would also help them, all this connection with themselves and their past will help them remember the plot more vividly and more clearly. So that is all from me.
Good morning, everyone, teachers and friends. Today, I'll be explaining how the personal response approach can be applied in teaching literature. This is my activity. I'll call it the advice column. This activity is actually suitable for more intermediate level students, and it aims to encourage students to respond personally to literary texts by relating the character's experience to their own life. Firstly, the teacher will introduce the text and guides the students through the reading and the discussion of the story. During this stage, the teacher asks simple questions about the plots, characters, and as well the conflict to ensure the students understand the text. Next, the teacher introduces the advice column theory. It is where that the students are told to imagine that one of the characters are seeking advice about a problem facing the story. Hence, they must write a letter replying them what they would do about it. For example, is written in this example. I have an example of advice column, and which is where they have a certain dilemma they have to be completed from a friend, and students will be have to be brainstormed on thinking how does it can be done. From there on, students are then asked to reply to the character. In their response, they should give advice, explain the reason as well, and also, if possible, relate the situation to their own experience and also their personal values. After completing a task, students will share their responses with their classmates. They must share on like why did you give this advice and how do you relate your personal experience through it. Have you gone through the same thing? So this all helps to demonstrate the personal response approach is because that students are able to express their own opinions instead of searching for a single correct interpretation. They can make personal connections and also support their ideas with evidence from the literary work. Moreover, students are also learn to appreciate different viewpoints shared by their own classmates. Overall, the advice column activity helps to make literature lessons more meaningful and engaging. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much.